As we take a look at some of the ideas of what's happening outside of Italy during the Renaissance, we want to draw attention a moment to the rise of the Ottoman Empire. As we had discussed earlier, during the time of the Crusades, especially by the time the Christians had taken Jerusalem in 1099, they had been able to go in and take over Jerusalem from the Seljuk Turks and some of the other people because Islam had been greatly divided. That the caliphates that we talked about earlier had fallen apart as the Sunni and the Shia had struggled with each other, and outside forces, new people coming into the Islamic movement, for example, the Turks from Central Asia, they also had stirred up a lot of issues in terms of now a new language and a new culture coming in, but also adopting itself in many ways to Sunni Islam and not Shia versions of Islam. These are older, longer-term issues. But what we want to do now is take a look at the rise of the Ottoman Turks for a second with the idea that they have come in from the outside. They are now going to be setting themselves up in controlling much of the old area of the Byzantine Empire. Right? Now remember, the Byzantine Empire had been founded by Constantine the Great back in the 4th century. That Eastern Roman Empire is going to last all the way till 1453. It's going to increasingly get smaller over time, but still be relevant in many ways. It, of course, is providing the religious models and languages and cultures to many of the peoples of Eastern Europe. Now here comes the challenge of the Ottoman Turks, and what they're going to do is, having come out of Asia, all right, come in and take over large areas of the former territories of different Islamic caliphates, all right, and bypassing Constantinople, but then directing themselves into Europe. By the 13th into the 14th century, they have now been able to penetrate into Europe. There's a series of famous battles and struggles in and around Kosovo in 1389, where the Serbian Christians are defeated in battle by the Muslim Ottoman Turks. And now the Ottoman Muslim Empire is increasingly expanded into Europe itself. And that will pose a challenge as we move forward in the coming centuries. Right? By 1453, the final small bit of Constantinople, the final bit of the old Byzantine Empire, it falls in 1453. There is no longer any truly Roman state in the east, although what will happen is increasingly in the north, the Russians will take on the claim of being the new Rome, taking the traditions of the Byzantine Roman Empire and adopting them to the Russian condition. There will be even some talk of Moscow being the third Rome. Rome was the first one, Constantinople was the second, and now Moscow is the third. These are ideas that are going to influence especially the development of Russian thinking and Eastern Orthodox Christian thinking as well, as separate from and continuing to be separate from the Western tradition, although each side claims to be, of course, Christian. Now, as the Ottoman Turks expand, they're now coming into contact in Eastern Europe with many of the Christian peoples of Greece, Bulgaria, Serbia, Kosovo, on the edges of Hungary, and the further north and the further west the Ottomans penetrate, the closer they're getting to the traditional homeland of Europe, and are going to pose both a political challenge, because the Ottoman Empire is organized very differently from Western tradition. The Sultan is sort of all-powerful within the Ottoman Empire. There's a series of very good sultans who are good at organizing themselves, using what would usually be called a grand vizier, a sort of assistant to run the whole empire as a military machine. There was also the idea that the Ottoman Empire, essentially, if you push came to shove, there's not really a clear sense of anything except the Sultan is in charge of everything. So in terms of Western traditions that are growing in the sense of, like we just talked about with the Renaissance, individualism and choices, that's not going to be an issue here with the political and military development of the Ottoman Empire. What also is going to happen is that the Ottoman Turks are going to try and find ways to expand, not only with the idea that the Russians have taken over control, part of the idea, but also to go back and find a way to accumulate more power. And one classic thing they do, and this is just a way to kind of show you how they operated, they would oftentimes kidnap young children from Christian families in Eastern Europe, many of them from Slavic families of various kinds and sorts, take them, essentially force them into a conversion into Islam, and then have them be a dedicated part of their army. And they're referred to as the Janissaries. And they are a powerful group as we move forward inside the Ottoman Empire, and will be very, very useful as military soldiers, but also give some structure. When you're the Ottoman emperor, when you're Ottoman sultan, your empire is based on you being in charge of everything. And one thing that oftentimes happens is they will essentially eliminate, kill off most of their enemies as the best way to deal with any issue. But the Ottoman Empire now is going to pose a challenge to the point where they will have a very clear understanding. And for example, they will expand into Europe and defeat the Hungarians at a famous battle in the 16th century. So now the Ottoman Empire is expanding further north into Catholic Christian territory like Hungary, posing a threat to many other peoples of Eastern Europe as they expand outwards. And increasingly, what we want to think about here with regard to the Ottoman Empire is that it will be a continuing military and religious and economic threat to the Europeans all the way until the 1680s, when there will be a moment in time where the Ottoman Empire surrounds and besieges the city of Vienna in modern-day Austria and is on the verge of victory, and from there we're going to expand into Poland and other areas. So this is not an inconsiderable risk that the Europeans have. The Ottoman Empire is a sincere, real military and religious and economic player, especially in the Eastern Mediterranean and in Eastern Europe. The legacy of the Ottoman Empire will be the spread of Islam, again into some places in Europe, much like it had penetrated into Iberia, into Spain and Portugal, starting in the 8th century. Now we have another injection, another challenge of a rising Islam in Europe proper again, this time in the eastern part of Europe. It will create some difficulties later on in terms of language, religious and cultural traditions that in many ways are going to last until this day. Take a look then within the context of what you're reading about this very, very important empire and what it does to influence Europe. At various points in time, it makes a military alliance with other European powers and influences many of the decisions within the European context, especially in the time period of the Reformation. Also, take a look and see if there are some practice questions to help you get a bigger hold on what happens with the Ottoman Empire's expansion, especially into Eastern Europe.